Hello, Cohasset, and welcome to our town. I'm Mark DiGiacomo, and together with my partner, Pat Martin, tonight we're going to focus on 2004, the year in review for Cohasset. And it's really been quite a year, hasn't it, Pat?
It sure has. A year full of controversies and debates and new things and old things.
Yeah, I think we'll go all the way back and talk about the election last April.
Ancient history.
Right, and then the town meeting, annual and special. And a lot of the things that will be carrying over into next year.
Yeah, a lot of what took place this year will certainly lay this landscape for the upcoming year, certainly.
Yeah, so tonight, no guests, just yours truly and Pat, looking at Cohasset and the year that's just gone by. But before we start, let's turn to Rich Austin. He went around town and looked at some of the new stores. We just heard a couple of minutes ago from Brian Houlihan at Beers talking about the Village Festival that's coming up this weekend. And so we'll follow up now and take a look at some of the newest shops that Rich Austin visited.
Hi, Eddie. Yeah. Hey, listen, we need a little help. We're doing a lead-in for this, our town show. Yeah, you know me, I'm the roving reporter. Right. Yeah, well, we're going to interview a bunch of people in town, and we're not sure exactly how to do this. Got any ideas? No. No. Not funny. No, we got nothing. No. No. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, let's use that. Okay. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Hi, Rich Austin here, your roving reporter for Our Town, the cable access show that's sweeping the nation. That's right, it's sweeping the nation. In fact, we're going to have people tuning in about this little segment here today. You know, there's been a lot of development in Cohasset these days. A lot of projects getting through the planning board. But flying underneath the radar is a whole other development. Retail development in the village. Yes, that's right. Look behind me. We don't have brick sidewalks or brick roads yet, and no, we don't have a daffodil festival, and no, Tommy Hilfiger hasn't moved into town yet, but pretty soon, this is going to be just like Nantucket. You just wait and see. Come on, we'll go see all these little flashy boutiques, and I'll tell you just what I mean. More adoring fans.
Rich a little later on. But again, hearing from Rich and hearing from Brian at this holiday season, I think it's very important for us to really emphasize during the holiday season and really all year long, shop Cohasset. We have so many new stores and so many old stores that have done well. It's important to support our merchants so that all of our storefronts can remain occupied, and let's keep our money in Cohasset. Where it belongs.
Right, and there's lots of free parking, and there really are some great shops. I don't see you much down there, but I know I'm down there quite a bit, and there's many, many things to find, and new things as well as old things. So do check it out.
Well, I'm not much of a shopper personally, but
I see Lynn down there a lot.
Yeah, exactly. But really do shop Cohasset, please, folks. All right. Well, Pat, let's dive right in. One hardly knows where to start. But if I were to ask you, what do you think, pick one event this year that had the most influence, was the most important thing that happened during 2004, what would you pick?
That's a tough one. I don't know if I would say so much it was a specific event rather than it being a topic or an area. And if it was an area, I would have to say Cohasset personnel. We saw personnel ring through so many of the issues and lead into some of the controversies that then led into some of the debates and some of the issues that came before town meeting floor. And we had personnel issues within the police department, personnel issues within the town hall and our administration, new personnel. So a lot of changes there, which just opens the door for what happened and what can still happen as far as personnel and what it means to Cohasset.
Well, I think when you talk about personnel, and I would agree, and there's, even with that, there's several to pick from, but it certainly would seem that the biggest personnel issue had to do with the police and officers McLean and Quigley.
Right.
Suspension, which happened back in October of '03, the hearings which occurred last year, this year, 2004, and were kind of abruptly terminated. it certainly seemed that when you look back on several of the big events that happened, a lot of it emanated from that whole situation.
Right, I would agree. And it seemed like it emanated in the sense that it almost started a snowball, or you could look back and say it was a snowball in the sense that did one event affect the coming of another event? You know, did the police controversy lead to Mark Haddad and his resignation? Did some of the political uprising that we saw begin when people were unhappy with the controversies and felt that, or the handling of the police and suggesting that there were controversies based on the fact that information wasn't getting out and politicians and town officials were being less than transparent? Did that start to grow into what we saw later develop throughout the year?
Well, I think, you know, anybody looking back at the suspensions back in October and the hearings, and I saw 2 of the hearings,
Right.
You know, has to look back and just say it was a real mistake. I mean, I don't see how anyone can put a real good face on that. When we had Mike Sullivan came in and we talked to him a little about that, our first show.
Right.
It was a very costly to the town, and it certainly appeared that there was just never any case against these officers. And a lot of money has been spent, and I would agree, a lot of bad feelings.
Certainly.
It certainly kind of coalesced an opposition group, and I think they put together candidates for the April elections.
Right.
Certainly then rolled in and were behind the recall, regardless that some said it had nothing to do with it. But clearly,
the feeling was there.
well, clearly, and Wig Pearson mentioned it at one point, and you know, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, there was a lot of anger about that,
Right.
that whole situation.
Right, just the way it was handled. And I think, as you say, it coalesced a feeling or a group that certainly wanted to say, I think I can do better, or we'd like to put people in place who could do a better job. And then that raised issues of mismanagement and issues of lack of trust and so forth. But, you know, certainly I think if you look on the other side too, going in, you never know what's ahead of you in the sense of, you know, you fire across the bow and you wait to see what the return shot will look like. And so who knew that the case might be as complex as it was? And if you fast forward into the future, I think Rob Spofford did a nice job at town meeting in saying, hey, is this recall all about, or similar to what happened in, was it Abington where they had a recall? And should we not discipline officers, or should we be gun-shy on doing our jobs just because we worry about the controversy that might come out?
Well, I think a lot of the group that, the opposition group, so-called, look at it, and I think their response would be, no, you've got to do the right thing. But I think their problem was, where was the case? Well, why did we go through this? There were clearly some people in town who felt the town would have been better without these officers on the
Right.
force, and some who felt strongly on the other side. But in order to start the suspensions and the disciplinary hearings, where was the case?
Right.
There didn't appear to be any case. In fact, there was no case, as it turned out. Obviously, I mean, I think the selectmen went into it feeling that it was the best thing for Cohasset to do it. But at the end, there was nothing there, and
Right.
there was a huge cost. And I think that continues to be an issue, as much as, and you know, and who did what? I mean,
Right.
I think the people still want to know. Was it the selectmen's, or whose fault was it?
Was it Haddad's? Is that why he left?
Selectmen, Haddad, town council,
Police chief?
police chief? How did this happen that we just fell so flat and spent a lot of money? Now, will this have legs, as it were? Is it going to carry on next year, you think?
I don't know. I get the feeling that because we have new personnel, or I'm hoping that folks will say, well, that's behind us. We have new people in place. Let's at least extend to them a honeymoon period. Let's extend to them the chance to put their own mark, their own personality, their own way of doing things on these issues. And I think when you take that in a singular sense, I mean, we've got the new town manager coming in. We've had the new police chief for several months, the new superintendent for several months. But you look at them coming together for the first time and working for a brand new budget for fiscal 2005, 2006, what does that synchronicity look like when the three of them sit down and add their ways of doing things? And will it kind of wash away the old and say, well, that was then, this is now, we're going to do it?
Well, we have two selectmen seats coming up.
That's right.
And both Ronnie and Fred were on the selectmen board, obviously, when these decisions were made concerning the police. So one would wonder, no one's made announcements, and it's about that time.
Right.
But if Ronnie or Fred or one or both end up deciding to run, I think you're going to hear more about the police, whereas if they don't, perhaps that'll be set aside.
I would agree, and if this election in 2005 takes the form or the feeling of the election of 2004, certainly one trend we saw was the voters voting out the old in favor of the new. And so is that also what's going to happen? Well, a lot of mistakes made with the old. We want the new, fresh blood, regardless of the fact that they might not have the history or the experience. Let's just keep filling the lake with fresh water and hope that's our best bet.
And yet, you know, if a Ronnie were to run for re-election, she's always had very strong school support, deservingly so. She's
Right.
always been very supportive of the schools. Senior citizens, again, very strong support. She's spent a lot of time working for them.
Certainly has.
And Fred, you know, is the kind of person that nobody seems to dislike. I mean, Fred tends to be quiet, but
And well
people,
known behind the scenes. I think people discount that.
well, yeah, and I think Fred has some common sense and that people appreciate, and you know, is thoughtful and so forth. So so you've got those pluses going for them, but again, with all of the turmoil out there, you got to think that the opposition groups is going to put somebody up to run against them.
Well, and you got to look at, too, what the ramifications that will be, because if you look, you have on the Board of Selectmen two new people. You have Spofford, and then you have Dormitzer. Dormitzer, I think, being associated more with the opposition that you've talked about. So if you were to add two new people, and they sided with Dormitzer on those issues, the new versus the old, suddenly you'd have the majority on the selectmen to take the board and the town of Cohasset in a whole new direction. You know, forget the history and what you've done in the past and how we go from there to here. Hey, we've got the majority. We can do quite a bit of things.
That'll be interesting.
It certainly will.
But again, I think another obviously very important thing that happened this year was Mark Haddad's resignation.
Right, which still leaves a big question mark, although we talked to Mike Sullivan and are aware ourselves when dealing with personnel that you can't, according to the law, release a lot of information as far as the who's, the why's, the what, but he's gone, and that question has remained, why did he go? Was it related to the mishandling of the police investigation or something else?
Or something else. Well, I think that will, while I think it was an important watershed point, our first town manager leaving, I don't think that that's going to have quite the influence, the fact that he left, that perhaps the police suspensions did. However, we have a new town manager, and that obviously is going to be a major issue or effect on the town as he starts and puts his own fingerprints on the town.
That's right. I mean, certainly I think in dealing with Mark Haddad, you felt the mark of his personality and his strength and the way he liked to do things on everything that he touched. So, for good or bad, I'm sure that those same qualities will come from the new town manager.
Right.
Is he a quiet guy? Is he more into planning, strategic planning?
Well, I haven't met the gentleman, but certainly a lot of the people who were on the committee who have met him are very excited about him coming on board. I think a lot of the selectmen were criticized for not having enough control over Mark, watching him and so forth. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that I think was a criticism. So I would certainly suspect that whoever this gentleman that comes in is going to find the reins a little tight.
Right. Well, and again, I think hopefully they'll also be given a little bit of leeway to see how it feels to work with other new people, in the sense that I know when we hired Denise Walsh, the thought was, okay, she'll have to get up and running and fit into Cohasset's way, her budget skills, will they fit with Mark's budget style, and where will they come together? Now, if they're all new, does that give them a chance to try new things? Hey, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? And really build something with a strong partnership, which I'd like to see.
Yeah. Well, I think the Mark leaving certainly there's still tremors from that, and of course there was the pay that he received after the fact, the vacation pay, and that created a lot of issues this year as well.
Well, and as well as the leftover legal bills, which we paid at town meeting, and then there was a subsequent article really in the Ledger about how much towns on the South Shore have been paying legal fees as far as dealing with some of these issues too. And that leads right into the fact that, or the state of the current budget has some holes in it all around.
Right. But some of the other, you talk about personnel, the Nicole Butler situation certainly was another one that caught a lot of people off guard and surprised and concerned, and that went back to the Haddad issue as well.
Right. And again, goes back to that issue where I think people wanted more control, or some say, and because they didn't have it, maybe they felt in the hands of public officials, they wanted to put it in their own hands, and we saw that take shape with the recall proposal.
Right, right, and we're relatively fresh off of town meeting. It's had some time to sink in, and I guess the recall. Now that it's a couple weeks have gone by, what are your thoughts about that whole debate?
Well, I think it certainly was symptomatic of what we're talking about. How it just started at one point and grew and took its own shape or legs, as you said, and was really a mechanism or a symptom of wanting to get back to the disease itself. How can we get more control? How can we prevent investigations that had no merit from taking shape and costing the town so much money and leaving such a bad feeling in people's mouth? How can we prevent it? Can we hold something over the head of public officials? To me, I guess from being a therapist, I just kept thinking the whole world was trust. Who do you trust? Do you trust your public officials or don't you? Right. And I think we saw that in the debates.
Yeah, and it was interesting just from a political point of view. The supporters of the recall started out town meeting with a motion to move it from the end where it had been, I think, the second to last article, put it right behind the Little Harbor sewer group. And those two groups had been working together, so obviously that was an effort to make sure that their voters were there and stayed there and voted. But so much for strategy, because then the Little Harbor debate went so long that the town meeting, George Marlette ended the first session of town meeting, and so there you had it. It was the first issue on the second evening, and certainly it appeared during the first night clearly that if that had gone forward, it would have passed, I think. I agree with you.
I think certainly it would have. I think the same people didn't come out on the second night, or I think we talked about it in the town meeting too. Our pre-show, just letting it sit overnight gave you a different flavor of what took place. And Tana Kasperowitz mentioned something about the recall in an article that she wrote for the Tiny Town Gazette that I think captured what might have happened as people thought about it. My concern was, there's a lot of trust and assurances that the recall wouldn't be used frivolously. And sure, that's true for maybe the people who are intimately involved with the process, or the 5% of Cohasset populace that was at town meeting. But what about, it was open to anybody, and we saw right out of the gun, the first order of business at town meeting was somebody calling for the resignation of the 3 incumbent school committee members. So to me, that said, and Tana agreed, oh my goodness, somebody's already ready to use it, and they're not really even in this debate. They're thinking about something completely different, school, when the rest of us might have been thinking about selectmen and police investigations. So I think that might have changed people's point of views as well.
Well, it's interesting because even during that second session of town meeting, if you had asked me when the session began, what do you think? And I talked to some other people who felt the same way, that, why are we even having the debate? Let's just have the vote. It's going to pass. let's just, dispense with the pain. And yet, it went down 2-1.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. But that's town meeting for you. You can never really gauge what happened. Some people came in late, but clearly there were some people there with that sat and listened to the debate, and there was certainly a lot of debate to listen to.
2.5 hours worth, right?
Yeah, it was truly long.
Well, and I hope maybe people take something back from that. We've been saying that forever. I think a lot of people are critical of town meeting. Oh, it's antiquated, it's loaded, it's stacked. Why participate? People have already spun things. It's going to happen, but no, it in many cases follows the true purpose, where you're supposed to come in with an open mind, listen to both sides of the debate, and then make up your mind. And I think that's what happened with the recall, because I agree. I thought it was going to go down in flames. I thought surely it would have been voted in.
Yeah.
My opinion would have gone down in flames, but it was amazing, 2-1.
Yeah. I think, and I saw some comments from Lou Harvey, who was on one of our previous shows, and
Right.
we had a really good discussion, I think, about the recall article. Lou indicating that he wasn't going to bring it back, and that's traditionally, I think, what happens. I mean, it's frustrating. I've been on both sides of that situation where you look and say, gee, if we had just gone a little earlier, if we had
Right.
made a few more phone calls, and so forth. Because even though we say 2-1, it wasn't. It was 30 votes here or there,
That's right.
and you got a different outcome. But it certainly didn't seem to me that anyone had the stomach to bring it back, for instance, in the spring or in the fall. But who knows? I mean, this was the third time it had been up, and it's
Right.
probably, we're not going to see it real soon, but we're probably going to see it again.
Right. Well, I imagine we'll still get a flavor for that in the upcoming election, or a flavor for those two sides as other issues pop up in 205. It's not going to go away. I think people are still, as you say, feeling the pain, or carrying their opinions on the way things were handled with the police. And
Yeah,
we'll
well,
see it.
I think there's still, the anger is out there, and the defeat of the recall. Does that make people less angry or more frustrated? I don't know, but I agree. I think the folks who supported the recall will clearly put up candidates for selectmen, maybe school committee, and we'll have to see.
Right.
But that was, the recall had to been was a very interesting part of last year, and its effects, I think, will roll into this year.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, so why don't we take a little break here, check in with Rich as he tours again, the new stores downtown. When we come back, a lot of other things to talk about that happened during 2004.
Yep, sure are. And some predictions.
Absolutely. We'll be back in a minute.
Back here, behind the scenes at Atlantic Bagel, we're going to see if we can find out what their secret to success is. Frankly, I'm looking around the stock room, and all I see is, oh, gosh, we've been caught. There's Dan Bells, the owner. Here's your mom. Welcome over here. What are you doing? On break? Well, while Dan is preoccupied with all that business out in front, let's keep snooping around. There's got to be some secret to the success down here. I don't see it yet, but... Wait a second, what's this? Hey, I thought they made their own coffee here. Ha! So what's the name of this store? I'm a little confused.
I know it is confusing. Needle Point South, the Sports Closet, and Coasting Cottage.
Mrs. Sylvia's by the sea. Although I don't really actually see the sea here. So what's the name of the store?
Twist,
And shout?
Twist.
All the best. All the best.
Windsor Tea Shop and Tea Room.
But we're not in Windsor, are we?
No, we're not. We're in Cohasset.
All right, so we're trying to go into Goodfellas, right? The new pizza place, again, next to Bernard's here. You didn't want to be shot on camera. Yeah, I know what's going on there. Why do you think they call it Goodfellas? Yeah. Capiche? So we're here at Rooms in Bloom with Carolyn Evans, the shopkeep.
Yes.
Got the best bagel, top south of Boston. Year after year won the award. That's about the one bagel people come in. Is that right? Now, who says that those are the best bagels? I do, and I don't want them.
love being down the village. It's a lot of
Because it's
fun.
closer to the house.
No, it's close to the village shop. That's nice, really.
How's the new store working out here?
I think it's a wonderful store.
We're here with Sue, and actually, she's not really that price of herbs and spices. So you buy this stuff by the pound, you sell it by the ounce? Correct.
From hostess to wedding gifts.
Really?
Yes.
There's nothing else in between there.
There's a lot.
By the way, can I? Do you think I could needlepoint?
Of course you can. I have men customers.
Totally. What kind of shop is this? How would you describe this shop?
Hey, eclectic.
Mocha Madness Mix.
I have men's ties over there. I have some nautical things. I have some ships models back here. I have baby things, christening gifts.
Wow.
We do sell loose tea and gifts.
Can I still get my propane filled here and some
No, you
baseball
can't.
cards?
You can't get your propane filled here. We don't have trains and we don't have baseball cards.
Come on, nuts. What color are you?
Sorry.
Tennis, golf, exercise wear, ladies' clothing.
We do interior decorating.
You do?
Yes, we do.
Wow.
Design services. We give that.
There's frozen foods, a lot of packaged foods. I've tried to get as much organic as possible, but they're not all organic, but it is all natural.
Baby, gifts, cards, candles, pocketbooks, casual wear, children's tennis.
Do you run exercise classes out of this place?
No.
We have about 100 varieties of loose tea.
Toys for all ages, particularly young children.
Really?
I have jewelry for young people, jewelry for old people, and middle-aged people.
What's this all about? Well, we're open-minded, we try different things, people love it, so we keep it.
Christmas,
Clever. I see clever stuff.
different stuff you can't find around here. Some wonderful monkey purses, handmade purses, shoes.
You actually haven't really officially opened yet, have you? Oh, you have?
Hoping to open this Friday and Saturday. What's it, the 29th and the 30th?
Right now, we're just choosing things that we think other people might be interested in for gifts for all different occasions.
I'm going to have to break for tea now. Is it one pinky out? Is this the proper way?
No. No pinky.
No pinky?
No pinky.
I've been doing the pinky for years. This isn't right?
Not really.
What is the proper way?
You know, you pick the cup up, that's
Yeah.
all.
And you do that.
And then
I don't know.
you bring your saucer if you're...
You do bring the saucer
Well,
up there.
if you're far away from it, you do it
Okay,
on a
right.
coffee table. But
Yeah.
on a regular table, you don't really have to, but just in case you drip.
Yeah. Well, old habits die hard, so I'm going to be a pinky guy out. Do you think that's okay?
That's okay if that's what you want.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Tonight, we're looking at 2004, the year in review for Cohasset. Next up, Pat, let's talk a little about the schools. Again, town meeting was a little ugly when it came to the schools and the school committee.
Yeah, started right off with Roy Fitzsimmons putting on the floor a motion to ask for resignations of 3 incumbent school committee members. That was a shocker.
Well, yeah, and people say, well, nothing's being nasty here. I mean, come on. That was...
And it wasn't personal, remember.
Yeah, it wasn't
Don't take
personal.
that personally, that we want you to resign because you are involved in a controversy. That was thrown around, too.
Yeah.
Controversy to defraud the...
Conspiracy.
Oh, conspiracy, that's right,
Right,
yes.
it was a major conspiracy. Well, but the problem, of course, is stemmed from this, is the money issues.
Right.
We had an override last year, $400,000 override, and then you turn around and for this year's budget, after we got the extra $400,000, you had the $93,000 gas bill,
Right.
and also the unemployment situation, and then you got to roll in those monies into, we got to pay last year on the gas bill, and then this year on that, those two pieces. And then there's this talk of $400,000 to $500,000 being under, budget
Right.
for this current year.
Yeah.
And again, people are pretty upset about that.
That's right, and wanting to hold people accountable, not systems or not lack of funding from the state or increases in student enrollment. They want heads.
Right. And this, and at this last town meeting, of course, while thankfully Roy's request that everybody, the 3 people resign was not allowed to go forward, his motion to have a committee formed to
Right.
investigate the school budget did pass.
That's right.
And so that's something that happened at the end of last year, which is clearly going to have some effect going on into 2005.
And it'll be interesting too, because you could see a good side to it and a bad side of it. I mean, it's done, so you can't say, well, we shouldn't have this committee, because obviously it was voted in, and I imagine shortly they'll start appointing people. But the good side might be that maybe they'll get to the bottom of it, in the sense, not that to the bottom of it sounds like it is a conspiracy, but certainly, in my opinion, from being on the school committee, a lot of information was shared about the budget being underfunded and too tight, and growth not keeping up with the money and so forth. And sometimes people just didn't want to hear that.
Right.
They want to believe that it's a group of people who aren't doing the best to sharpen their pencils and make things more efficient, and then they want to believe that they can elect somebody new who has all these great ideas that everybody never thought of before, and they'll make the change. So maybe by opening up everything and letting people get in there and roll around in the details and munch on it till their heart's content, they'll finally see that the school has been saying, and it's true, that we don't have enough money to do what we need to do, and we're doing the very best job. It's a challenge.
Well, that may be true, and I think it is, but what is the school, what is the town going to do about the current situation with $400,000 to $500,000 being under budget? When you and I know the budget's, how tight it is,
Right.
Where's that money going to come from?
Well, I think it's going to start the debate again that we had many, many times, that, what do you begin to eliminate when you understand that your mandate is to provide core education? It seems like all we can afford is core education, and everything else might have to go, or at least it'll be on the chopping block.
Well, the athletic fees are now going to be up to $150 per child.
Right.
Which is, really getting steep. That's double what they were. I think some people were under the impression there was none.
Right.
You and I know differently, since we've been paying them, that it's been at 75.
Right.
In the spring, I think it's going to go up to 100, and then next year up to 150. That'll help. That'll certainly raise some money. But you do feel like anything other than core curriculum is going to be kind of a pay-as-you-go.
I agree. And then I think the sad thing is we'll probably see cuts and bigger class sizes.
Well, Barbara Buckley and her group worked so hard to get, they ended up saving two
Right.
of the teacher positions. And a lot of people, well-intended people, had some problems with that,
Right.
and saying, there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to keep this and so forth. And I would say those are the first positions that are going to have to go.
I agree.
I just don't see how you're going to be able to keep that. But we're in the middle of the fiscal year. That's one thing to look forward. But in the current fiscal year, you can't lay off teachers in the middle of the year. And it just seems you stop buying new supplies. There's a limited amount of things you can really do.
Right.
But it seems like we're going to have to go to the reserve fund. And that's not going to make people happy, but the bills have to be paid.
That's right. And I think, again, getting back to the issues of trust, it's almost, and we'd hinted at this before too, is do people have to really feel the decimation and the cuts and the pain and suffering that'll take place to then trust and say, oh yeah, okay, what they were saying was true, and it wasn't that they were spending money on expensive, pencils that they could have, got cheaper and so forth. You hate to see that, because you're talking about a system, an educational system, and the product goes into our children.
But the other thing that's started last year and will roll into the first couple months of 2005 is the teacher contract.
That's right.
And that's going to be a major issue. That's been is being negotiated right now. Obviously, is a huge part of the budget, and of course, we don't know, or if we did, we wouldn't tell how those discussions are going. But it feels like if the school committee comes back with, I would say, anything more than what the town gave its employees, there's going to be some real problems.
I agree, and I think people also don't realize that the budget is 80% personnel. So again, you have some leeway in the sense, as you say, if you can negotiate a better or a cost-saving contract, that's an area to do it. But if you can't, that just leaves 20% of the budget for discretionary so-called cuts or changes in funding. So it's a challenge.
Well, the town negotiated its contract with its unions, and my understanding is generally 3-year contract like the teachers will have,
Right.
0% raise, 2% raise, 2% raise. I mean, can the schools come forward with a contract that gives any more than that?
That's a good question, and I think people have to think about that as well. If they do, and even if the union accepted it, there can still be ramifications. Hingham had a contract which was ratified, but yet folks weren't, or teachers weren't too happy about it, and they say there was a mass exodus of people leaving. And so you could get a cheaper contract or get some savings, but it might not come without a cost if new teachers and talented teachers decide to go elsewhere.
Well, but frankly, I'm not sure that many people, I mean, obviously parents with school-age children care about that, but you certainly get the feeling from all the things that have happened this year that not a lot of people are going to really care. People are going to say, well,
Yep.
So be it. We've had enough. We've had override after override, and enough is enough. And if that's the way it's got to be, then that's the way it's got to be. We wish it didn't. At least I hope they'd say they wish it didn't. But that's okay.
That's true, and then maybe they'll see the pain and suffering, or maybe they'll get a hint of it if this committee talks about some of the funding mechanisms that have haunted the school committee, put us in the position, or put them in the position that they're in now with a shortfall, as well as the challenges that they have to face next year. But you talk about people not caring and walking away. We have a school election coming up too, with one seat, a 3-year term coming up for election.
Rick Shays, yeah.
He was elected to the unexpired term. And you combine the controversy there and the lack of support and maybe the beating that they took at town meeting. What's that going to say as far as candidates saying, hey, I want some of that action. Please sign me up. I want to be
Well,
on the school committee.
again, we don't know. We're sitting here on December 15th. No, we haven't heard any announcements whether Rick is going to
Run or not.
run again or not. Again, the folks, the opposition groups that the people who put together the recall and so forth, will they put up a candidate? One would certainly think so.
Right.
They, I think, feel strongly that they need to have more representation on the school committee. So that'll certainly be interesting to watch as well.
Yeah, I'd like to watch it myself. It'll be interesting. My feeling will be, I'll make a prediction right now, that there won't be a contested race for the school committee. Recall and controversy aside, just based on the fact that in the last 6 years, there's only been contested races when I ran for re-election,
there
and
you go.
I'm not there, so it'll be a shoo-in.
So it may just be Rick can just run unopposed.
Yeah, whoever wants it can walk right in.
Well, the other thing that happened up at the schools, important, was a new superintendent after
Right.
6 years. We've had her on the show, talked to her about, I guess kind of early on. Maybe we'll have
In
to
the
have her
honeymoon
back.
stage,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, and see what she thinks now after sitting through the town meeting and all of these budget problems and so forth. But there is new leadership up at the school.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see. Certainly we'll have a lot of information to share on our show as we get closer to fall town meeting and get to deal with the election, which really will kick off pretty much when we return from the holidays with our first show on January 13th.
Right. And Jack DiLorenzo being named principal at the middle high. Jack was going to retire after a long service to Cohasset, and then Mike Jones left rather suddenly, got his job, and Jack agreed to stay on. So that'll be another thing to watch, is to see whether Jack is willing to hang in there, put off his retirement for another year. From all indications I have is that things have worked out well for him. He's enjoyed it. People have enjoyed him.
And even though he's new in that position, he gave a feeling of stability in this time of change, that he'd been there for so long.
Right,
you know.
exactly.
So that was a good thing in that sense.
So there'll be a lot happen with the schools
Lot
this
to talk
year,
about.
and 2005 as well.
And the election. Can't wait. Can't wait to be on the sidelines for a change.
There you go. But in addition, obviously, to the schools, lots of other things happened this year, and I guess one of the bigger issues generally is development,
Right.
and major developments in town. The Avalon situation was approved by the ZBA and went up to appeal. The Water Department filing an appeal with concerns about the on-site wastewater.
Right.
That is still pending now. And we have Cedarmere, which was approved by the Planning Board. They're ready to go as far as I know. But the most controversial and the one that had the most discussion this year was, of course, the Cook Estate.
That's right, the Cook Estate, which I guess we'll see come back, I would imagine, at town meeting in another form, in the sense that last we heard, Mike Sullivan had gone with several other members of the Board of Selectmen or community to meet with the trustees to get an extension, because originally, as Joe Nedrow reported on our show, they had till the day after town meeting to report back to the trustees as what the town was going to do with the current proposal and sale agreement and so forth, but they got the extension, which is a good thing. So will it take the shape of senior housing? Will it be senior housing on a smaller level with septic tanks? No, it can't be septic tanks, or smaller septic tanks. Well, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we go back and look at the year. Cook Estate kind of burst on the scene very quickly.
Right.
Mrs. Cook had died, and there was a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions with the Board of Selectmen, and then it felt like very shortly before town meeting, all of a sudden the rumors started going, and bang, there we were.
Right.
And this was the annual town meeting back in March. Voted in pretty enthusiastically.
People felt good about it.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, again, they discovered, they went out, the Northrop Group comes in, they're going to build whatever amount of units, 98 units or whatever it was, but problem.
Yep. Once again, back to an issue of trust. You told us that we could have an on-site water recycling system, and we can't.
Right. And that created a lot of problems as soon as that came out.
Right.
And then automatically the folks who had worked so hard, the Joe Nedrows, the Ronnie McMorrises, and so forth, automatically said, okay, well, we'll just go to the sewer. How'd that work out?
Yeah, well, I would say that certainly galvanized the sewer discussion and made it one of our hotter issues, which I still laugh when I think about our director, Jim Schwartner, saying, I don't get it, what's so political about sewer? Well, he found out over several months that it's very political, and certainly brought new life to that group, and left us where we are now, that they get the next right to the capacity, and that then boxes out Cedarmere or Cook Estate or Avalon.
Well,
wouldn't you say?
I think people were surprised that the article was taken off of the town meeting.
Right.
Not really sure what was going on behind the scenes. I certainly had the sense that they saw, despite their best efforts to mollify or to try to convince the Little Harbor people that it wasn't an either or, it just wasn't working. And they were going to bang heads with Little Harbor, and
It could get ugly.
yeah, and I think they really saw that group plus other groups concerned about the financing, the money, and then there were still groups who didn't really like the Cook Estate, especially neighbors, all coming together and perhaps just saw the writing on the wall.
Well, and then add to it, too, there was a lot of discussion that would set precedent, or that if we were to give a development sewer rights, regardless of whether it was a private town-supported endeavor, that would open the door legally for Cedarmere to petition and Avalon to take
Right.
us to court, and many people,
Developers,
yeah,
other
including Peter
developers.
Pratt, who said here on a previous show, said he felt that it was a bad political precedent, that we'd be getting in line for people to say, hey, you did it for them, you got to do it for us.
But the interesting thing was when it was announced at town meeting that the article was coming off, they didn't, it certainly wasn't, well, and we've given up, it's over with.
Right.
They're getting another extension, which is fine, but the question then is, okay, but what are you going to do with the extension?
Right.
I mean, the tests have been done. If you're going to have Northrop Group do the development for the number of units that they're doing, they can't do it on-site. The only option, as I understand it, is sewer.
Right.
So one wonders whether maybe the strategy here is, well, let's see if Little Harbor wins, and we'll talk about that in a second, and they
Sure.
did. So now maybe the Little Harbor people feel more comfortable that they're going to get sewered, so they're not going to come out with, you know, knives drawn.
Pitchforks.
Yeah, and the next time, and maybe at least that group won't try to stop Cook Estate, because it seems to me we're just delaying the situation. They still need sewer, unless you're going to go to a smaller project.
Right.
Because if you go to a smaller project, then you can do some on-site up there.
Right, and I thought that possibility was presented in the sense that perhaps we can't do the Cook Estate in its current format, but isn't part of the reason that we like Cook Estate, be it the senior housing or not, it still gave Cohasset, the town, the opportunity to develop that property to our liking that best suited our needs versus just sell it and somebody comes in and says, well, this is how I'm going to develop it based on what we do as a business.
Well, that's right, but I think the problem then is if you're going to downsize the whole project, give it to either Northrop or some other group come in and do it, well, now supposedly the finances don't work out. The one issue at annual town meeting last March or April was we don't want it to cost. Yeah, we want senior housing, it's a good spot, and yeah, but we don't want to pay anything for it.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is if you're going to downsize it enough to do the on-site, now you're going to have, it's going to cost the town some money. And again, in our current situation, is the town going to be willing to pay for it?
Yeah, but you know what? You may pay one way or you may pay another. Maybe people are beginning to think about what we talked about for quite a bit when we talked about Avalon and its impact would be, all right, it won't cost the town anything to develop it, but will it cost the town something to service it as far as the infrastructure, what it means if kids move in and they add to the enrollment and that type of thing. So do you pay
I mean,
cash?
if it's not senior housing.
Right.
If it goes, well, yeah, but I think, I can't imagine that the town's not going to put something else in there that's not going to be senior housing. And they may want to pay for something and may not, but it's got to be senior housing. And yet, the other side is Cedarmere is ready to go. They'd like to be tied into sewer. That doesn't seem to be working out for them. But they can do on-site, and they're ready to go. So there is going to be senior housing in Cohasset. It's going to be at Cedarmere. So that also may take some of the air out of the balloon for the Cook Estate if it comes back.
It'll be interesting. And who knows, maybe it could take a completely different shape and form. I know there was talk about a private yet independent group, the Cohasset Foundation,
Right.
showing an interest. What does that mean? What can they offer the project and its development as it moves forward?
Yeah, exactly. And there was that talk, but I think, again, the Cohasset Foundation, which basically their concept is that to take a property, an open space, and rather than pay to keep it completely open, which is very costly, buy it, develop just a portion of it,
Right.
and then use that money to pay yourself back and then keep the rest open. But again, my understanding is that the way they've crunched their numbers, they're falling about $1 million short, and they're going to look to the town for that $1 million. Is the town going to be willing to pay that kind of money to keep a portion of Cook Estate open and avoid the sewer issues?
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Again, I think sewer is going to be the discussion into 2005, certainly.
Well, speaking of sewer, I mean, the whole Cook thing really spun off, it seemed to be, the Cease Group and the Little Harbor sewering, which had been moving along. Every year some more money was put into it. People wanted to kind of stretch it out and have it done, you know, near the end of the decade when a lot of the school funding was taken care of. But when folks saw the Cook, people started to talk about Cook being sewered, well then all of a sudden it seemed like the Cease Group said, we got to get this done.
Enough is enough. That's right. And they put a mandate as far as a date on when they want it done. And that'll be interesting to see as far as backing that in budgetarily, as far as our capital expenditures and the future of how we budget those type of things. But also, I guess we'll see that at Springtown meeting too. My understanding was that they may be coming back to talk about the funding piece and how they would fund it. Would it be a 50-50? You know?
Well, I think the first thing we're going to see, because that was a very unusual situation where you had town council adamantly stating that what you are proposing here is unenforceable, illegal.
Right.
So you got to kind of play the tape forward. How is this all going to shake out? Okay, now there's this mandate that the sewer commissioners sewer Little Harbor, and that selectmen come back and vote it in, you know, put it on the town meeting to vote in the funding next April. What town council said, and apparently Cease's attorney disagreed, although we didn't hear from him or her, he said, you can go ahead and do that, but you can't force the selectmen, you can't force the sewer commissioners to do anything.
Right. Well, is that why that whole article and the discussion that George Marlette led off with, is that why that was really a vote for a sense of town meeting type of thing?
Well, I think what town council wanted to do was to amend it so it would be a sense of town meeting.
With different wording.
That amendment, no one even proposed that amendment.
They didn't want to hear about it.
Right, and so what went through was this mandate that the boards would be required to do this.
Right.
But both the sewer commissioners and the selectmen have indicated that they think it's too fast, shouldn't go forward. So the question there is, what kind of attitude are they going to take at this point? Are they just going to say, yeah, folks, it was nice you got that vote through, but it's unenforceable, we're not going to do it? And then what does the Cease Group do at that point? I guess the only thing they can do is to go to court and try to get a judge to order that because it was passed by town meeting, you must do it. Town council says that's not going to happen. So, but
And that's going to cost the town money too. If
Well,
the town
that's-
has to go back to court.
yeah, but on the other hand, maybe the sewer commissioners and selectmen look at it and say, listen, as far as we're concerned, based on what town council's telling us, we don't have to do this, but
Right.
we heard town meeting, and even though we don't need to do it, let's just do it. And that may be what happens.
Well, I think that's what they were saying too. When they all recommended to vote against it, it was because, once again, the issue of trust. They were saying, look, we're committed to this. We said we would do it. The sewer commissioners are in favor of this, and so are the Board of Selectmen. We just don't want to get boxed into this language. We don't want to open up our legal liabilities. And we do want the freedom to say, hey, in 2009, what if
Yep.
Avalon had opened and brought in 400 new kids, and the schools needed to be renovated or added to? How could we do it in the same year if all the stars aligned in an unfortunate way and we needed to do a giant capital expense at that time? We need some freedom.
Well, I think absolutely. That argument, however, didn't carry the day. But again, if they still feel that way, they can thumb their noses at this last vote, and we'd have to see what happens. I mean, they say town council tells us that it's not legal, it's not enforceable, so we have to do what we think is in the best interest of the whole town. And but on the other hand, they may just say, you know, I'm sure they're going to continue to take that position, but they may say, well, okay, well, we're going to go forward anyway. Then, as you mentioned, okay, here it comes, $15 million is the figure that's been thrown out there. How is that going to be financed? Is it going to be the 50-50? No one has talked about financing. Cease has never, from what I know, I shouldn't say never, but I'm not aware of any finance. I didn't hear any discussion about financing.
Nothing was firmly attached to it, for sure.
So now that this is passed, and now will they focus on, okay, and by the way, we want it 50-50.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that, right.
Yeah, and which frankly, you know, is
could be
fair. I mean, I'm in
that's
the
right.
district, so I'll
And I had 50-50 in North Cohasset, so I benefited there myself.
but that's going to be a debate. That is going to be a debate as to whether it should be 50-50. And On the one side, clearly, I think people are going to say, well, a precedent was set at the debates on town meeting floor when we talked about, especially North Cohasset, but also Central. It was stated very clearly by several people, you do this, you set a precedent.
Right.
And people went ahead and did that. Diane Sullivan got her North Cohasset neighbors
did.
squared away.
She did.
And then Central was a little easier of a sell. So now, why on earth would you not do 50-50 for the Little Harbor and Atlantic Ave?
Well, because you can't afford it, which I think is the issue. I mean, we all want what we want, and it makes sense, and it may be fair, but at that given time, if you have to choose between, food or, recreational activities, you have to make difficult choices, and we might be in that position.
Right.
Well, I'm going to make a prediction too, as you said, we'll be getting into those, that I would bet that the best bet would be to keep this discussion going. We may see people from the CEAS group or people who are committed to the sewer projects coming up for candidates for the election.
Well, that's interesting. Again, that was certainly the view that Diane Sullivan, when she came back and ran and served her one term, she was really doing it for the purpose of making sure that Cohasset got sewered, which is the worst kind of reason to run for public office. I mean, talk about recall. But that was certainly the view, and after her term expired, she was gone.
She was gone
within a month or two, is having sold her house with the sewer.
Right. Well, and that's not to say that this group would be as single-minded as her, but certainly, I mean, they would have an advantage if you had two people come out of that district, two people who were very committed to the CEAS group or the Little Harbor, and they joined on. Dormitzer, I think, was in favor too. You automatically got the majority of the Board of Selectmen in that issue.
Well, I think, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And see how people treat it and how it turns out at town meetings. So, it'll
never be dull.
Well, it certainly hasn't. It's been a very, very interesting year and a fun year on our show.
Yeah.
We've completed our first partial year and had some fun. Had a lot of I think good guests and hopefully help to inform people, and hopefully we can continue to do that next year.
That's right, and people have been calling us, so do in the future email us. Our email site is ourtown@theclickstudio.com. We've been getting suggestions. For guests. We have also had requests for Rich. Rich Ofston has gone to groups, and we had our first PSA announcement because someone asked us to
That's terrific.
Consider it. So keep those coming.
All right, and that's it for tonight's show, and that's it for our shows this year. So Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to you, Pat.
Happy holidays.
And everyone, enjoy your holidays out in our town. Good night.
All right, go ahead.